You know what I do for a living, right? I dig into trust. I'm researching trust, writing about it, talking about it, even here on this podcast, teaching workshops on how to build it. But here's something that you may not know. I'm also an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at SMU. So how do these two worlds collide? What does trust have to do with the bold, high-stakes world of starting a business? Well, here's the short answer. Trust in entrepreneurship isn't just important, it's essential, and sometimes more so than for an established, mature business. It's the engine that powers every decision, every partnership, every relationship, and every breakthrough. In this episode, I'm going to give you the long answer, diving deep into why and where trust matters most for every entrepreneur. And it all starts right after this. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust, and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? So you don't need another introduction to the topic. Let's just jump into the different areas where trust is important for an entrepreneur, for starting a business. So the first area is trust between the founders. Research showed that the probability of success of a startup business is about 30 to 40% higher when there's more than one founder. Here's the thing. You need different personalities for founders or for the founder that are hardly ever found in just one person. So you need more than one person. Plus, being in a startup, from my experience, is a roller coaster, and you need somebody right there by your side that would ride that roller coaster with you. So you need more than one founder. You need to be able to trust each other. You need to be able to trust each other very much, because you need to have the ability to hold a constructive disagreement. And that ability goes dramatically up, in fact, 141% up, when the two founders trust each other. Two or three or more founders, when the founders trust each other. In order to be able to hold a constructive disagreement, and what is a constructive disagreement? It's that disagreement where you actually talk about the topics, where you actually bring up the elephant in the room, when you dissect the hardest issues and you don't try to avoid them, and that your conversations are not personal, they're professional. You can yell and shout at each other, but stay friends and trust each other, because it's all for the business. You're on the same direction. Your ability to be vulnerable with another founder, that goes up 240% if you have high level of trust. Your ability to give feedback to the other founder goes up 106%. Your receptivity to feedback from the other founder comes up 76% if you have trust. Now, what is that trust based on? It's based on one component, obviously, is competence. You have to believe that the other founder is competent, and they have to believe that you are competent. It goes to personality compatibility. Your personalities have to be compatible. Now, being compatible doesn't mean that they're the same. They can be complementary. You complement each other. So one of you is the person with the obsession for the product. The other can be the person with the highly pragmatism, and you need both. And so you might be complementary and still, I would call it a personality compatibility, because you're compatible. Symmetry is critical for founders. And it's symmetry in different aspects. For example, imagine you're starting a business with somebody else. You are not working anywhere. For you, the business is 100% of your time, but for your partner, the business is only a part-time gig. You're going to invest money. Your partner doesn't have that kind of money to invest. That lack of symmetry would lead to a lack of trust. So Trust, the first place where trust is really important in entrepreneurship and when you start a business, is the trust between the founders. The second place is trust with the advisors. You're going to rely on advisors. And that advisor might be your university professor. I can't tell you how many students, former, current, and future students, are coming to me for advice on their startup business. And one of the reasons they come to me for advice is because they know something that they may have heard from somebody else or they heard directly from me, is that I will never tell you that you have a great idea if I don't think that you have a great idea. And there are several reasons for it. One is, if you don't know that your idea is not great, but I do, and I'm still going to say great idea because, we're being very politically correct, and I'm going to tell you what you want to hear rather than what I think you should hear. If that happens, I may lead you down a path to failure when you're going to spend money, waste money, time, energy. I think that we're kind of limited in how many startups we have in us. Some of us have more, some of us have fewer or none. And so I just made you waste one bullet. Okay? One bullet, one startup. So you need to know that your advisors are advisors that are going to give you good advice, that they're competent, but more importantly, that they're not going to lie to you. They're going to tell you what you need to hear, even if it's uncomfortable for both you and them. Here is another interesting perspective to that. I just talked about the trust that you may have or need to have in the advisors giving you advice that you might rely on, but you may need to be trusted by them so that they will give you that advice. I told you in the previous segment that the level of, or actually I didn't tell you, the level of feedback that I'm going to give you goes up if I trust that you're going to take it well. It goes up by 106% if I trust you to take it well. So the second area where trust is important is the trust between you and the advisors advising you on the business. Outside of the business, they're not part of the business. They can be more objective, more pragmatic. They're outside of the business. You need to trust them to give you good advice, the advice that you need to hear, even if that advice is, this is really bad. But for them to be able to give you that kind of advice, they need to trust you that you can handle that kind of feedback. The third area of trust is the trust by the investors. This is a little less symmetrical because, obviously you need to trust them to give the money, but that happens in the front end of the relationship, or relatively in the front end. You need to be trusted by them. You need to be trusted by them based on your competence. So they will trust you based on your competence. They will trust you. One element, one of the 8 laws of trust, trust law number 5, trust is transferable, really plays a role here because investors would typically invest in a business once somebody else that they trust has invested in that business. And it's really important. And this is, by the way, why investors, typically angel investors mainly, typically invest as a network of multiple investors. It's not only so that they can aggregate the amount of investment, it's also so that they can trust each other, that if they trust each other and one of them trusts you or more than one trusts you, then they will trust you as well and you'll be able to raise that investment. So it is critical that you are trusted by the investors. One of the components of being trusted is time and intimacy. If you want to be trusted by the investors, and this is advice that I always give my students, never ever let your business plan make the first meeting. Your business plan should not make the first meeting. You should make the first meeting in person. And if it's absolutely not possible to do it in person, especially due to geography, then at least do it over Zoom or a tool like that so they can see you. High intimacy. They can see your passion. They can see your body language. They can ask immediate questions. If you let your business plan do your talking for you, you send a business plan. First of all, it's very easy. So they realize that you don't really take them seriously as investors. And therefore, why would they trust you? But the second thing is they're going to have questions, and the business plan can't answer questions. You can, but you're not there. You send the business plan instead to make the first meeting. They may, whenever there is a gap and they don't have an answer, they will make assumptions. Will their assumptions be right or wrong? Do you want them to have those assumptions? You just let your business plan make the first meeting and create the first impression. There is no second chance to make a first impression. Be there for the first meeting. Being trusted by the investor is key because the investors are going to give you their money up front and expect to get paid back with premium, with a profit. They expect a high return on investment over the long term. Could be 3, 5 years, or even longer. Being trusted by the investors is very important. The fourth area where you need to have trust as an entrepreneur in starting a business is actually when you're building the business. You're no longer starting. It's no longer just you and your co-founder or co-founders. Now you're having employees. And the thing is that you cannot micromanage them. One of my earlier research, I found that the correlation between employees' creativity and productivity and the level of autonomy that you give them is 47.4%. So there's a pretty strong correlation of whether you give them autonomy to whether they are going to be creative and productive. And especially in a startup business, especially in a small business, your dependency on their creativity and productivity is very high. You don't have the bandwidth to micromanage them anyway, because a startup business is a very busy business. Now, here's another interesting thing. I found in later research that the correlation between your willingness to give such autonomy and the trust that you have in the employees you're giving the autonomy to is 67%, even higher. So you have to make sure that you hire employees that you trust and then trust them. It's not enough to hire employees that are trustworthy, because you have to also trust them. So hire trustworthy employees and then trust them. There's another component here, and that is the employees would often work in teams. Maybe it's teams in the same team, in the same functional area. Maybe it's cross-functional teams, but there needs to be trust between the employees. Now, it's a lot easier for me to tell you, you have to hire employees that you can trust because that's your decision and you have to trust them. That's once again your decision. By the way, you have to trust them and you have to show them that you trust them, because even if you trust them, but you don't show them that you trust them, they will not feel trusted and will not behave in a trustworthy way. They will not be more creative and more productive. So it's easier for me to tell you to hire trusted employees and to trust them. What's harder is for me to tell you that the employees need to trust each other. This is where your role as a leader comes in helping them build trust. You know, in my trust habits framework, I have 4 layers. The bottom layer is why is trust so important? What is it? The second layer is the what makes one person trust another person, still theoretical, even research-based. The third layer is, so how do you become more trusted? But the fourth layer is, how do you help others build trust? So this is where you need to operate at the fourth layer, help employees trust each other, identify dependencies, especially critical dependencies between employees, identify areas where you have critical dependency and low trust, or even moderate trust, and help resolve these issues. So the fourth area of trust in entrepreneurship, in building, in starting a business, is when you build the business and now you have employees. I will add one more thing to that, and that is, it's not only that you trust the employees have to be able to trust you. If they trust you, they will walk through fire for you. If they don't trust you, they won't. Area number 5, trusted by the customers. And that's a biggie, obviously, and it's a biggie for every company, every individual that sells services or products. And this is the entire framework that I have for Trust Premium that I'm writing on right now. But it's even more critical when you are starting a business, when you're an entrepreneur, because, buying from Apple or buying from Dell or buying from Microsoft or buying from Nike or you see where I'm going with that. They have a brand and there is transferable trust simply by the fact that they have such a big brand and you already know and other people have told you can trust this brand. You as an entrepreneur, as a startup, when starting a business, you have no brand. Nobody knows you. So, and there's very few people that can recommend you, therefore have transferable trust to customers that you want to be trusted by. The framework for Trust Premium starts with people buy from people they trust. It even goes further where they are even willing to pay a premium when they buy from somebody they trust. Now, what do you do if they don't know you, if there's no transferable trust? Maybe the first customer or first few customers that don't rely on each other, don't trust each other enough to rely on the fact that one of them trusts you. I have the opposite, definitely the opposite phrase or term for Trust Premium, and that's the distrust discount. If they don't trust you, and it's not that they don't trust you, I think I'm maybe a little too strong with the word distrust. I should maybe call it no trust. And no trust, we think about no trust as something negative, that they will never trust you. But the trust continuum has no trust in the middle, then trust on one side and distrust on the other side. So distrust is an active action of not wanting to trust someone, having reasons to not trust them, to distrust them. Trust is an active action of trusting someone, having reasons to trust. But no trust is just, I don't know you. And when you are the person or the company that they don't know, you may have to provide a distrust discount. So a certain discount that would allow them to buy from you when they don't know you over someone that they trust. Because it does, for the most part, come down to money. I recently, we remodeled our pool, and I ended up paying a Trust Premium by hiring someone that I trusted more than the other person. Now, they asked for about, I would say, 5% higher price. Okay, 5% higher price. And the other, so if we look at it the other way around, the other charged approximately 5% less than the one that we hired. What if they would have charged 10% less? Would I have gone with a cheaper one over the one I trusted more? How about 20%? How about 50%? By the way, there's always, and this is something you need to worry about or care about when you think about the distrust discount, and that is this whole phrase that 67% of people in my surveys believe in, and that's you get what you paid for. So at some point, the price is so low that you go, well, it can't be good, right? So you might have to use the distrust discount, but the way you get trust is, for the most part here, because you're not known, is transferable trust. And I'll look at it as the inbound transferable trust, and you'll see why. Cold calls don't work anymore. Back in the 1990s, cold calls had a success rate of about 8 to 10%. I talked about that in the last episode. Today, it's about 1 to 3%. And probably lower than that. It keeps on going down. The amount of effort that you put to get one person to buy from you is tremendous, especially if they never heard of you because you're a startup company. You're just starting. So transferable trust, having reviews, having references, having relationships where they know somebody who bought from you, those would help them make that decision to buy from you. And again, I call that transferable trust inbound. That's the inbound transferable trust that brings you business right now. But I want to refine this too, and that is people buy based on perceived value versus perceived price. Yes, trust does have value, and therefore that's part of the perceived value. They believe that they can trust you. It increases the perceived value. But they make the purchase decision based on the perceived value versus the perceived price. As long as they believe that they're getting more value than the price they believe they're going to be paying, they buy, right? Now, if this is not a one-time purchase, but a long-term relationship, that makes what happens after the purchase decision even more important in keeping customers. So let's say that you're a financial advisor or an insurance agent. This is not a one-time selling you something. This is an ongoing relationship where you need to maintain it. Trust builds after the purchase decision. Perceived price becomes actual price when you realize that this thing cost more than they told you it will. Maybe there's some maintenance that nobody mentioned to you. What does that make you feel? You trust them less. Not less important, maybe more important, is that now they get the actual value versus the value, the perceived value, the value that they thought they're going to get when they hired you, when they bought from you. What do you think, what would you feel if you bought something and then after the fact you realize that you're getting less value than you thought you were getting? The actual value is lower than the perceived value. You're not going to trust them, right? Okay, so if this is a one-time deal, hey, you already got the deal, right? You already sold, made the sale. That's it. You don't care anymore. If this is an ongoing relationship, you do care because you're going to be losing a customer who's going to go to a competitor. But let me go back to the previous question. Do you care if they lost trust in you or reduced their trust in you after the sale? The answer is yes. Why? Because remember, what's important to you to get new customers, or the best way for new customers to trust you, is transferable trust. The inbound transferable trust. They trust you because they trust somebody else who trusts you. If you make your customers not trust you, there is nobody that a new customer can trust who will say good things about you. So you always have to keep in mind that to build that trust, and I call this the outbound transferable trust, that leads into inbound transferable trust. So it's the outbound transferable trust with an existing customer or a previous customer that becomes the inbound transferable trust for a new customer. So you have to keep in mind that regardless of whether it's an ongoing relationship, like an app maybe that you have to pay for on a regular basis, a subscription or something like this, that the way to maintain that trust that becomes an outbound transferable trust and therefore inbound transferable trust for the next customer is to make sure that the actual value is higher than the perceived value. You give them positive surprises in terms of value, and that the actual price is not higher than the perceived price. They pay what they thought they will pay. That's area number 5, the trust by customers. And as you can see, it's a very important one, and even more important to a startup company that has absolutely no brand and very little transferable trust initially. The last area I'll talk about, the 6th area, is trust with suppliers. And I know that this sounds like one of those crazy things. Why do you need to be trusted by suppliers? I mean, obviously you have to trust suppliers. Otherwise, don't buy from them. You have to trust that they're delivering what they were said that they will deliver. This is where you're the customer and they're the supplier. You have to trust that they will deliver what they promise they will deliver, when they promise, that the quality they promised, with the value that they promised, and that you're not going to end up paying more than you thought you will pay. So now I'm putting it in the opposite direction to the previous area, which was the trust that the customers have in you. Now you're the customer, you have to trust the supplier, obviously. So it's important. One area is it's important that you can trust your supplier. Now, your supplier may be an established company, so one of the 4 R's of inbound transferable trust is reputation. So they already have reputation. They may have reviews, they may have references that they give you, and there might be people you know and trust that will give you recommendations, specific recommendations. But it's not enough that you trust your suppliers. Your suppliers need to trust you. And it's kind of crazy because you go, wait a minute, I'm the customer. The customer is always right. I'm the customer. I don't need to be trusted by my supplier. Bull. Yes, you do. First of all, because you're a startup, you have no credit history. They don't know if you're going to pay on time. They don't know how you're going to be as a customer. So yes, they need to trust you. What happens when they trust you? When they trust you, you may get better terms. You may get credit from a supplier that they might not otherwise provide. And as a startup, as a small business, a starting business, this is critical. They may give you better payment terms. They may give you, they may sell to you during scarcity. They might be overextended in terms of capacity. So they're short on capacity. There are times of scarcity. For some reason, everybody's buying from them. And I've been there. I've been there where I needed product that was in such high demand that the wait time was like forever. And I was given product ahead of bigger companies than me, simply because my suppliers trusted me and believed that there's going to be an ongoing long-time relationship with me. So the last area I'll talk about, and I'm sure that there are other areas that I did not mention, is the trust that you need to have with the suppliers. And it's two-directional. It's the trust that you have in them. You must have trust in them. They're your suppliers, but you also must be trusted by them, especially when you're a young, no-brand company. This is it. I covered 6 areas of where trust and entrepreneurship intersect. Their worlds collide or overlap. So what does trust have to do with entrepreneurship? Everything. And many times, even more so than with established companies, the established businesses, because you have no track record, because you have no brand. The areas that I mentioned are trust between the founders. Without that, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to go past stage 1. Trust in advisors who are advising you. Trust by the investors who invest in you. Trust with the employees. You need to be able to trust the employees. The employees need to trust you or be able to trust you. You can't force them to trust you. You have to make yourself trustworthy and so that they can trust you. But you're also responsible for building trust between the employees. Trust by the customers. That's the whole trust premium framework, even more important for a starting company. Trust with the suppliers. So you have to be able to trust the suppliers, but you have to have the suppliers be able to trust you. So trust is all over the place with relationship to entrepreneurship. There are probably areas I didn't even think about that you can think about. And if you do, shoot me an email. Let me know. Trust is very important for entrepreneurship. There is a very strong overlap, probably even more than with established companies. That's it for today. I hope this made you think a little differently about the importance of trust in entrepreneurship. May trust be with you. This was The Trust Show. What would you like to know about trust and trustworthiness? Let me know and I'll answer it in a future episode. I would love to hear from you. email me at yoram@thetrustshow.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show so you will automatically get notified when I release a new episode. Rate it. Write a review for this podcast because those ratings help not only you, but also others looking for podcasts just like this. If you're looking for more resources to learn about how to build trust, be trusted, or know who to trust, look up my workshops, online courses, books, or go to my website, trusthabits.com. And remember that the answer to these two questions will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you, and can you trust me? Thank you for listening or watching The Trust Show.